A new nanny enters a home marked by silence and chaos, where a traumatized boy refuses to speak. While experts fail with protocols, she simply draws, and for the first time he responds. An invisible bond is born, capable of rebuilding what everyone thought was lost. But what begins as a silent cure becomes a threat to those who profit from suffering, and love will be tested to its limit. The scream echoed through the marble corridors of the mansion in Hampstead, an affluent neighborhood in London. Danielle Galvin took a deep breath before ringing the doorbell again. She was late for her first interview as a caregiver, but the crowded buses of the capital showed no mercy, even on a rainy day like this. The door was opened by a man of approximately 40, with graying hair at his temples and deep dark circles under his eyes that betrayed sleepless nights. Rafael Mendoza, a renowned real estate mogul, looked utterly exhausted. "You must be Danielle," he said, trying to maintain his composure as another scream cut through the air. "I apologize for the reception. Today isn't a good day for Luke." "It's all right," she replied, adjusting her worn bag on her shoulder. "May I come in?" Raphael led Danielle through the impeccably decorated corridors until they reached a room where chaos contrasted sharply with the mansion's elegance. A brown-haired boy with wide eyes was throwing objects around the room, while a woman in a white lab coat tried to restrain him. "Dr. Camilla, please, he needs space," Raphael pleaded. "He needs boundaries." "Mr. Mendoza," the therapist retorted, adjusting her thick-rimmed glasses. "If this continues, I'll have to recommend sedation and a stricter behavioral protocol." Daniela observed the scene in silence. She didn't need a diploma to realize that this approach only aggravated the child's state. Without asking permission, she knelt on the polished wooden floor, opened her backpack, and took out a sketch pad and some colored pencils. Ignoring the therapist's protests, she tore out a page, drew two simple circles side by side, and placed the paper halfway between herself and the boy. The silence that followed was almost palpable. Luke stopped screaming, his eyes fixed on the paper. After a few seconds, he approached cautiously, picked up a blue pencil, and completed one of the circles with sad eyes and a mouth. In the other circle, Danielle added an expression of understanding. "Impossible," Dr. Camilla murmured. "He hasn't interacted with anyone besides his father for months." Raphael watched the scene, perplexed. "Luke doesn't... He hasn't spoken since the incident at school." "What incident?" Danielle asked without taking her eyes off the boy, who was now drawing a house with dark clouds around it. "Bullying," Raphael replied, his voice choked. "Severe. We found out too late. Since then, he's isolated himself in his room, stopped speaking completely. The doctors say there's nothing physical, no injury. But sometimes," Danielle interrupted softly, "the worst wounds are the ones we can't see." In the days that followed, Danielle was officially hired as Luke's caregiver. She had a degree in education from University College London, UCL, but had abandoned her master's degree to care for her ailing grandmother in the Lake District. Now back in the capital, she needed to rebuild her professional life, and this job was a unique opportunity. Danielle's method was unorthodox by the standards of London's high society. While Dr. Camilla insisted on rigid schedules and conventional therapies, Danielle created a silent dialogue through images. One day she would draw a broken heart that received bandages. On another, a dark cloud would gain a colorful umbrella, and later, a rainbow. "What you're doing with my son has no scientific basis," Dr. Camilla protested during one of the weekly meetings in the mansion's library. "With all due respect, Doctor, I'm creating a channel of communication," Danielle replied firmly. "Luke is expressing himself." "You're creating emotional dependency," the therapist retorted, "and that's not healthy." Raphael, who until then had only observed the clash between the two women, spoke up. "The fact is, Luke is calmer. Yesterday he smiled for the first time in months." Dr. Camilla adjusted her impeccably white lab coat. "Mr. Mendoza, I need to speak with you privately." After Danielle withdrew, it became clear to her that something would change. She could feel it in the glances of the mansion staff. In the way the housekeeper, Mrs. Marlene, avoided her eyes during breakfast. In her room at the back of the property, Danielle organized the drawings Luke had made in recent weeks. Children laughing at another child alone, a boy hidden in a closet, an adult with his back turned, ignoring the crying. The images told a painful story that no one seemed to want to see. The next morning, Raphael called her to his office. Sitting behind a massive mahogany desk, he seemed smaller, almost fragile. "Danielle, I appreciate everything you've done, but Dr. Camilla has convinced me that we need to follow a more structured method for Luke." "Mr. Mendoza," Danielle tried to argue, "your son is communicating through his drawings. He's processing the trauma." "The decision has already been made," he interrupted, unable to look her in the eye. "You'll have an excellent letter of recommendation and 3 months' salary as compensation." Danielle felt her stomach drop. It wasn't the job that worried her, but Luke. "Can I at least say goodbye to him?" Raphael hesitated. "Dr. Camilla thinks a clean break is better, so as not to confuse him." As she packed her things, Danielle found a drawing hidden among Luke's materials that had been left in her folder. It was different from the others, a carefully folded sheet. When she opened it, her heart froze. It wasn't a drawing, but a note written by another child, full of cruel insults and threats. The worst part was in the bottom corner, a school staff member's signature with the date, proving that someone knew what had happened and did nothing. With trembling hands, Danielle photographed the note and put it back where she had found it. She knew there was much more to that story than Raphael understood, and as she left the Hampstead mansion in a fine autumn rain, she promised herself that this would not be the end of the story. Outside, London continued its frantic pace, indifferent to the small drama unfolding in one of its mansions. But for Luke, sitting on his bedroom windowsill, the world had just become even quieter when he saw Danielle cross the gates with her worn backpack on her back. That same night, the screams echoed through the Mendoza mansion once again. 3 weeks had passed since Danielle left the Mendoza mansion. The London autumn advanced, bringing cold mornings and warm afternoons, a contrast she felt on her skin as she visited employment agencies in the city centre. Each resume handed in was a new hope that faded by the end of the day. In her small rented apartment in Islington, North London, Danielle received alarming news from her hometown. Grandma Benedicta, her grandmother and only living relative, was rapidly deteriorating in the Lake District. The expensive medicines and private consultations consumed her savings at an alarming rate. "Don't worry about me, my dear," Grandma Benedicta's fragile voice said over the phone. "God will provide." But Danielle knew she couldn't rely solely on divine providence. She needed a job, and quickly. That's when she received an unexpected call from a private school in West London. "Miss Galvin? This is Pine Ridge Academy. We'd like to invite you for an interview for the position of pedagogical assistant." Hope was rekindled. Danielle dressed meticulously the next morning, wearing the only formal outfit she owned. Upon arriving at the school reception, she was informed that the coordinator was waiting for her. "Miss Galvin," the coordinator greeted her, a woman of about 50. "Your resume is excellent, but I'm afraid there have been complications." "Complications? How?" Danielle asked, feeling her stomach drop. "We received an anonymous phone call about your previous professional conduct," the coordinator explained, visibly embarrassed. "Something about inappropriate involvement with an employer." Danielle paled. "That's completely false. There was never anything of the sort." The coordinator nodded, uncomfortable. "I understand, but please understand our position. We cannot risk—" That was neither the first nor the last door to close. With each promising interview, the same insinuations arose, the same suspicious glances. Someone was systematically destroying her chances of employment in London. Meanwhile, at the Mendoza mansion, the situation deteriorated. Luke had regressed completely. He refused to eat, broke objects, and his night terrors became increasingly frequent. Raphael, desperate, questioned Dr. Camilla's approach. "You guaranteed me he would improve," Raphael confronted her after another sleepless night. "He's worse than before." "Mr. Mendoza," Camilla replied with calculated coldness, "cases like Luke's are complex. The absence of his mother, the school trauma. Perhaps it's time to consider admission to a specialized clinic." The mention of admission made Raphael recoil. He would never separate Luke from home, not after everything the boy had already suffered. Ever since Marianne, his wife, left for Paris with a lover 3 years ago, abandoning their young son, Raphael had promised never to let the boy feel helpless again. That night, while tidying Luke's room, Raphael found something under his son's pillow, a collection of carefully folded drawings. He immediately recognized the style. These were the works Luke had done with Danielle. In one of them, 3 figures held hands under the sun. Below, a word written in a child's shaky handwriting, family. Raphael's heart ached. Had he made a mistake? That same week, Danielle received an anonymous package in her email containing scanned files, a copy of the bullying note she had found among Luke's belongings, along with school records and screenshots of conversations between teachers mentioning the problem with Mendoza's son. The files confirmed that the school was aware of the systematic bullying Luke suffered, but chose to cover up the case to avoid tarnishing its reputation among elite families. Without revealing her identity, Danielle forwarded all the documents to Raphael. The message was simple: the truth about what happened to your son. Upon receiving those documents, Raphael felt his world collapse. He remembered how he had insisted on keeping Luke in that specific school, even after the first signs of trouble, all to maintain appearances and social connections. His son had paid the price for his vanity. Meanwhile, in the Lake District, Grandma Benedicta was rushed to the hospital. Danielle had no choice but to return to her hometown, giving up the job search in London for good. At the local hospital, doctors were clear. The elderly woman would need specialized treatment that the NHS would not fully cover. "I'll find a way," Danielle assured her, though she didn't know how. She sold her used car, some inherited jewelry from her mother, and pawned the laptop she used for studies. Still, the money was insufficient. In desperation, she tried contacting old college friends, but they all had their own financial difficulties. That's when she met Tiago Saunders, the head nurse of the geriatric ward. Tall, with an easy smile and kind eyes, he began to help her with the hospital's bureaucratic procedures and eventually offered his friendship at a time of great loneliness. "My grandmother has improved a lot since you took over her care," Danielle commented one afternoon, as they shared coffee in the hospital canteen. "I'm just doing my job," he replied modestly, "but I've noticed you have a special way with the elderly on the ward. Have you ever thought about working here? We need someone in the administrative sector." The opportunity arose like a ray of hope. The salary was modest, but at least she could stay close to her grandmother and restart her professional life. Danielle accepted immediately. In London, Raphael began his own investigation. He hired a private detective to investigate the circumstances of the bullying Luke suffered and discovered a web of negligence and omission that went beyond what he imagined. He also began to question Danielle's abrupt dismissal. "Why did you insist so much that I let her go?" he asked Dr. Camilla during a session. "We've discussed this, Raphael," she replied, using his first name with an intimacy he had not authorized. She was creating emotional dependency in Luke. Or perhaps she was helping him when no one else could, he retorted, noticing how uncomfortable the therapist seemed. That same night, Dr. Camilla made an unexpected move. She appeared at the mansion without warning, bringing a bottle of wine and dressed more casually and provocatively than usual. "I thought we could discuss new strategies for Luke," she suggested, settling onto the living room sofa. "You seem tense, Raphael. Perhaps you need to relax a little." It was then that Raphael understood. The therapist's professional interest had turned into something personal. The subtle insinuations, the accidental touches during sessions, everything made sense now. And what if Danielle's dismissal had nothing to do with Luke but with jealousy? "I think it's best we end our professional partnership, Doctor," he said firmly. Camilla's face hardened. "You're making a mistake. No one understands Luke like I do." "Actually, I don't think you ever truly understood him," Raphael replied, showing her the door. In the following days, Raphael tried to locate Danielle through the address on her resume, but found that she had moved. Calls to her mobile went straight to voicemail. It was as if the only person who had truly managed to connect with his son had disappeared. What Raphael didn't know was that, hundreds of miles away, in a mountain town with cold weather and constant fog, Danielle was beginning to rebuild her life, unaware that their paths would cross again much sooner than she expected. The Lake District mountains dawned shrouded in mist as Danielle left for her morning shift at the local hospital. 3 months had passed since her arrival, and the hospital's administrative routine, though tiring, provided minimum sustenance for her and Grandma Benedicta. who was now slowly recovering at home. The rented apartment was small, just one bedroom, living room and combined kitchen, but the view of the Pennine Hills compensated for any discomfort. On the white walls, Danielle had hung some colorful drawings made by children from the pediatric ward, where she spent her lunch breaks, volunteering to tell stories and do art activities. "You have a gift with difficult children," Tiago commented, watching her calm an autistic boy in crisis during one of the sessions. "Why don't you go back to studying?" The University of London offers a distance learning postgraduate program in special education. Danielle smiled melancholically. "One day, perhaps. For now, I need to stabilize my finances." What she didn't tell anyone was how she still thought of Luke every day. She kept the drawings she had made with him in a folder, and sometimes on the coldest and loneliest nights, she found herself wondering if the boy was well, if he had started drawing again, if anyone had discovered the truth about the bullying he had suffered. In London, Raphael faced his own challenges. After dismissing Dr. Camilla, he consulted various specialists, but none seemed to achieve the same connection Danielle had established with Luke. The boy remained in his silent world, although the aggressive outbursts had decreased. Instead, a worrying silence took hold of him, as if he had given up even expressing anger. Raphael's real estate company, Mendoza Developments, was also experiencing turbulence. A large luxury condominium project in South London had been embargoed after anonymous complaints of environmental irregularities, complaints that mysteriously appeared after his professional breakup with Dr. Camilla. "It's no coincidence," concluded Marcus Lane, Raphael's lawyer and longtime friend. "The complaints are frivolous, but enough to delay the project for months. Someone wants to pressure you." The pressure increased when reports of alleged unethical practices by Mendoza Developments began to appear in architecture and urban planning blogs. The sources were always anonymous, but the information contained details that only someone close would know. "Revenge is a dish best served cold," Marcus commented, upon receiving another court summons. "Your therapist seems to know that." Raphael barely slept, torn between professional worries and his son's health. Luke had lost weight, refused to go to his new school, and spent hours looking out the window as if waiting for someone who never arrived. It was during one of those sleepless nights that Raphael finally gave in. He needed to find Danielle no matter the cost. He returned to the detective he had previously hired. "I need to locate her urgently," he said, handing over the folder with the information he had. "It's for my son." Meanwhile, in the Lake District, Danielle faced another setback. Grandma Benedicta suffered a relapse, and specialized medications were not available through the NHS. The hospital bill grew, consuming all the savings she had managed to accumulate. "We can arrange installments," offered the hospital's administrative manager, embarrassed by the employee's situation, "but we need to start treatment immediately." It was Tiago who offered financial help, interest-free and with no defined payment deadline. At first, Danielle refused, too proud to accept charity. But the gravity of the situation left her no choice. "It's not charity, Danny," he insisted. "It's what we do for those who matter." Those words warmed something inside her. Since leaving London, Danielle had emotionally shut down, focusing only on survival. Tiago, with his constant patience and kindness, began to break down that barrier. One Sunday afternoon, as they walked through Capivari Park, he finally did what both had anticipated for weeks. "Danielle Galvin, would you like to have dinner with me?" "A real dinner, not in the hospital cafeteria." She smiled, feeling her face flush. "It would be a pleasure, Tiago Saunders." The chosen restaurant was simple but cozy, a small Italian trattoria run by a local family. With candles on the table and a view of the mountains, the setting was perfect for a new beginning. "You never really told me why you left London," Tiago commented as they savored a mushroom risotto. "I feel there's a story there." Danielle hesitated. She trusted Tiago, but that wound was still open. "It's complicated. There was a boy, a job, an injustice." Before she could elaborate, her phone rang. It was an unknown number from London. Normally she would ignore it, but something made her answer. "Miss Galvin." The grave voice on the other end sounded tense. "This is Marcus Lane, lawyer for the Mendoza family. Raphael urgently needs to speak with you. It's about Luke." Danielle's blood ran cold. Luke, was he sick? Worse? Her mind raced through terrible scenarios. "Is he all right?" she asked, her voice trembling. Physically, yes, the lawyer replied, choosing his words carefully. But Raphael discovered everything. About the school, the bullying, the omission, and about how you were unfairly dismissed. He needs to apologize personally. Danielle closed her eyes, feeling a confusing mix of emotions. Relief that Luke was all right. Validation that Raphael finally knew the truth. But also anger for the injustice suffered. For the closed doors. For the defamation that had destroyed her professional. The chances in London. Tell him I'm fine where I am, she replied firmly. The past is behind me. As she hung up, she met Tiago's worried gaze. Is everything all right? Yes, she lied, forcing a smile. Just an old matter resurfacing. But the past would not stay buried for long. The following week, while organizing patient files in the hospital archive, Danielle was surprised by a familiar figure at the reception. Rafael Mendoza was there, looking distraught and visibly nervous, asking for her. How did you find me? Was Danielle's first question, as she confronted him in the waiting room. I hired an investigator, he admitted, without mincing words. I needed to find you, apologize, correct the mistake I made. Mistake, she repeated with contained bitterness. You fired me, defamed me, destroyed my job prospects. It wasn't me, Raphael interrupted. It was Dr. Camilla. She was obsessed. She wanted more than a professional relationship. When she realized Luke responded to you and not to her, she started to sabotage. Danielle felt the pieces fall into place. The anonymous calls to potential employers, the insinuations about inappropriate behavior. Luke is worse, Raphael continued. He stopped drawing, barely eats. Doctors are talking about severe childhood depression. Nothing works, Danielle. He needs you. The implicit plea hung between them. Danielle crossed her arms, protective. I have a life here now. My grandmother is ill, I have responsibilities, I'm getting to know someone. I understand, Raphael replied, defeated. I have no right to ask for anything. But at least accept this. He held out a thick envelope. Inside was a formal letter of apology, a legal retraction that could clear her professional name, and a check for a significant amount. This doesn't erase what happened, he said, but I hope it helps with your grandmother's medical costs. It's the least I can do. Danielle looked at the check, tempted. The amount would solve her immediate financial problems, allowing Grandma Benedicta to have the best treatment. But something prevented her from accepting. I don't want your money, she replied, returning the envelope. I want my reputation back. What can I do then? Raphael asked, desperate. Please tell me how to fix this. Before Danielle could answer, Tiago appeared in the corridor. His gaze alternated between her and the well-dressed visitor, confused. Is everything all right, Danny? Tiago, this is Raphael Mendoza, my former employer from London. The men measured each other silently, creating a palpable tension in the hospital's air-conditioned space. It was Danielle who broke the silence. Raphael, I need to think. I can't just abandon everything here and go back to London. I understand, he replied, defeated. I'll be in town until tomorrow at the Tariba Hotel, if you change your mind. When Raphael left, Tiago did not hide his concern. What did he really want? For me to go back to work for him, Danielle answered honestly. His son? He's not well. That night, Danielle couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned, thinking of Luke, the drawings they had shared, the silence of that boy who had suffered so much. She also thought of Tiago, the budding relationship they were building, the security he represented. At dawn, she made her decision, and she knew that, whatever path she chose, there would be no turning back. The mist covered the Lake District mountains when Danielle arrived at the Tariba Hotel. The luxurious alpine resort contrasted with the simplicity of the mountain town. Just as Raphael Mendoza seemed out of place among the relaxed tourists, with his impeccable suit and burdened expression. He was waiting for her in the restaurant, an untouched cup of coffee in front of him. Seeing her, he quickly stood up, almost knocking over his chair. You came, he said, not hiding his relief. Danielle nodded, sitting opposite him. I came to hear your full proposal. It doesn't mean I've accepted. Raphael took a deep breath and began to lay out his plan. He offered a formal contract as an educational mediator for Luke, with a salary far exceeding what she received at the hospital, defined hours, full benefits, and, most importantly, a clause preventing unfair dismissal. I'm also suing the old school, he continued. There's already enough evidence of negligence and omission in the bullying case. Your testimony would be valuable, but I'd understand if you didn't want to get involved. Danielle observed the man in front of her. He seemed genuinely remorseful, but also desperate. The vulnerability was new to him. The powerful businessman accustomed to controlling everything was now pleading for help. And Dr. Camilla? Raphael's face hardened. I reported her to the professional board. Investigations are underway, but there's already proof of the defamatory calls she made against you. Danielle nodded, satisfied with the answer. Still, she hesitated. I have a life here now, Raphael. My grandmother needs care. I've started a relationship. I can arrange the best treatment for your grandmother in London, he offered promptly. And as for your relationship, well, there are excellent hospitals there too if your boyfriend wants to transfer. The proposal was tempting, but Danielle knew it wasn't that simple. Tiago had roots in the Lake District, family, friends, a stable career. She couldn't ask him to abandon everything for a still recent relationship. I need time, she finally replied. Not just to think, but to organize things here. A month at least. Luke doesn't have a month, Raphael retorted, his anguish showing in his voice. He's fading, Danielle. Doctors have already mentioned hospitalization. Please. The urgency was palpable. Danielle closed her eyes, thinking of the silent boy she had met, the small victories they had achieved together through drawings. 2 weeks, she conceded. I need that time to talk to Tiago, arrange my grandmother's treatment, and get everything sorted at the hospital. Raphael agreed, visibly relieved. Before they said goodbye, he handed her an envelope. What's this? Something Luke made, he replied. I found it hidden under his pillow. When Raphael left, Danielle opened the envelope. Inside was a drawing, 3 figures under a large tree, a man, a woman, and a child holding hands. In the corner, with the hesitant handwriting of someone relearning to express themselves, it read, My family. Tears came unbidden. That drawing was more than child's art. It was a silent plea, a vision of the future that Luke held for himself. Danielle then understood that her decision was already made, though the path ahead was as hazy as the mountains surrounding the town. Telling Tiago was the hardest part. He listened in silence as they walked through Capivari Park, where they had shared so many moments in recent months. So you're going back to London, he stated when Danielle finished explaining. It's an opportunity to help that boy and rebuild my career, she justified, feeling torn. But I don't want to lose what we've started here. Tiago smiled sadly. London is only a couple of hours from here. We can try, a long-distance thing. Weekends, holidays. But both knew that long-distance relationships rarely survived, especially at the beginning when foundations were still fragile. There was also the matter of Grandma Benedicta. Despite Raphael's promises of excellent doctors in London, the elderly woman refused to leave her hometown. I'll be fine here with my friends from the community center, she insisted when Danielle tried to convince her. You need to follow your path, my dear. Don't tie yourself to an old woman. The 2 weeks passed in a blur of preparations, goodbyes, and arrangements. Danielle organized a schedule of regular nursing visits for her grandmother, coordinated with social workers to ensure nothing was lacking, and deposited her savings in an account that Grandma Benedicta could access in an emergency. Her last day at the hospital was marked by a small, impromptu farewell party in the cafeteria. Colleagues brought a cake and a collective card, wishing her good luck. Tiago kept his distance during the celebration, but when everyone began to disperse, he approached with a small package in his hands. For you to remember the mountains, he said, handing her the gift. It was a delicate silver pendant in the shape of the Pennine Hills. I'll miss you, Danielle confessed, allowing herself to be hugged one last time. Me too, he replied, his voice choked. But maybe it's not a definitive goodbye. The promise hung in the air like the mist that covered the town that morning. Raphael sent a driver to pick her up, with clear instructions to ensure a comfortable journey. The road from the Lake District to London was beautiful, descending the hills on winding roads that cut through the countryside. Danielle watched the landscape gradually change, the pines giving way to oaks, the pure mountain air being replaced by the capital's pollution. Instead of the Hampstead mansion, the driver took her to an apartment in the Notting Hill area, less ostentatious, more welcoming. The building had generous balconies with hanging plants, a completely different atmosphere from the cold marble of the old residence. "Mr. Mendoza moved 2 months ago," the driver explained, helping her with her bags. "He thought a fresh start would be good for Luke." The apartment occupied an entire floor with elegant but unpretentious decor. There were no more expensive artworks or untouchable furniture. Instead, comfortable sofas, cozy rugs, and, to Danielle's surprise, framed drawings on the walls. Raphael greeted her at the door, looking simultaneously anxious and relieved. "Luke is in his room," he said after the initial formalities. "He knows you're coming today, but he still doesn't speak," Danielle asked. "A few words occasionally. Only to me and only when we're alone. Never more than 3 or 4 words together." Daniela nodded, understanding the magnitude of the challenge ahead. "Can I see him now?" For Raphael led her down a corridor decorated with more frame drawings, all made by Luke, she recognized. They stopped before a blue door with the boy's name in colorful letters. "I'll leave you two alone," Raphael said, stepping back. "He might feel pressured with both of us together." When the door opened, Danielle saw Luke sitting by the window, looking out with the same distant expression she remembered. He had grown a little in the months that had passed, but he seemed thinner, with dark circles under his eyes that didn't suit a 7-year-old child. "Hello?" "Luke," she called softly. The boy turned slowly. His eyes widened as he recognized her, but he didn't move, as if fearing she would disappear again if he approached. Danielle entered the room and, without ceremony, sat on the floor. She took a new notepad and colored pencils from her bag. She drew a simple circle and pushed it towards the boy. For long minutes, nothing happened. Luke just looked at the paper, motionless. Danielle remained patient, waiting. Finally, as if something broke inside him, the boy got down from the chair and approached. He picked up a red pencil and completed the circle with an expression of astonishment. Danielle smiled, drawing another circle next to it, this time with a smile. Luke responded by drawing a house with a tree next to it, the same tree from his previous drawing. Without words, they resumed exactly where they had left off. The following weeks were filled with small victories. Danielle established a routine with Luke: mornings of drawings and artistic activities, afternoons of reading and outdoor walks when the weather permitted. Gradually, she introduced expressive therapy techniques she had studied on her own while preparing to return. Raphael observed the transformation with a mixture of gratitude and fascination. Luke smiled more, slept better, and had resumed eating regularly. He still didn't speak to strangers, but occasionally whispered words to Danielle when they were alone. "It's like magic," Raphael commented, after finding the two sharing a storybook on the balcony, with Luke pointing to the illustrations and babbling loose words. "It's not magic," Danielle corrected. "It's trust. He knows I won't judge him or push him beyond what he's ready for." As Luke progressed, Danielle balanced her new life in London with frequent calls to the Lake District. Grandma Benedicta seemed stable, the nurses reported good spirits, and even Tiago kept in regular contact, although their conversations were increasingly short and formal. "I met someone," he confessed, 2 months after Danielle's departure. "I didn't want you to find out from others." The news hurt more than Danielle expected, but she feigned happiness. "I'm happy for you, Tiago. You deserve someone special." At night, alone in the apartment's guest room, Danielle wondered if she had made the right choice. She missed the mountains, the fresh air, the simple life she had built. London, with its frantic pace and grey sky, sometimes felt suffocating. But then came the mornings when Luke would run to meet her with a new drawing in his hands, eyes shining with anticipation. In those moments, all doubts dissipated. One day, Raphael called her to his office after Luke fell asleep. He seemed serious, almost formal. "I have a proposal to make," he announced, indicating that she should sit down. "Not as your employer, but as Luke's father." Danielle waited, intrigued. "I'd like to formalize your role in his life," Raphael continued, "not just as an educational mediator, but as a legal guardian, with shared parental rights and responsibilities." The proposal was unexpected. "Raphael, that's complex. Are you sure?" "I've never been so sure of anything in my life," he replied, the intensity of his gaze revealing more than his words. "You brought light back to this house, to Luke, and to me." The air between them became charged with a different kind of tension, not uncomfortable but laden with unexplored possibilities. Danielle looked away, confused by her own emotions. "I need to think," she finally replied. "It's too big a decision to make impulsively." Raphael nodded, respecting her space. "Take all the time you need." That night, while checking on Luke before retiring, Danielle found a new drawing on the boy's bedroom table. 3 figures under a tree as before, but this time with new details. The house in the background was clearly the new apartment, and the 3 figures wore colorful clothes with smiles on their faces. In the bottom corner, in firmer letters than before, it read, "My real family." Looking at that drawing under the soft glow of the bedside lamp, Danielle felt her last resistances dissolve. Perhaps her place truly was there, not as an employee nor as a guardian, but as part of something larger that was just beginning to take shape. The London spring arrived with an explosion of yellow and purple trees in the city parks. 6 months had passed since Danielle's return, and the transformation was visible not only in the blooming trees, but also in the Mendoza apartment. Luke, now newly 8 years old, had made impressive progress. He spoke in complete sentences, though still with pauses and hesitations when nervous. He had returned to school, a small constructivist institution in Richmond, where the headmistress specialized in children with emotional trauma. His drawings, still abundant, had evolved from expressions of pain to complex and colorful stories. Danielle had also blossomed. She had enrolled in a postgraduate program in inclusive education at the University of London, balancing her studies with her work as Luke's tutor. Her relationship with Raphael had gradually transformed from a professional partnership into something more personal. Although both maintained respectful caution, prioritizing Luke's well-being above all else. That Saturday morning, the 3 planned a picnic in Hyde Park. Luke ran through the apartment, excited about the idea of feeding the ducks in the lake. "Slow down, champ," Raphael warned, helping him put on his trainers. "The ducks aren't going anywhere." "Danny said she has a new notebook for me," Luke replied, still breathless with excitement. "A real notebook to make stories." Raphael looked at Danielle, who was organizing the picnic basket in the kitchen. She winked, complicit. The gift was a surprise planned by both of them. A hardcover notebook for Luke to start writing short stories to accompany his drawings, an important step in his expressive therapy. The doorbell interrupted the moment. Raphael frowned. They weren't expecting anyone so early. "Must be the porter with some mail," he commented, heading to the door. It wasn't the porter. Standing in the corridor, impeccably dressed and with a neutral expression that didn't reach her cold eyes, was Dr. Camilla. "Good morning, Raphael," she greeted him, as if the months of absence and the legal proceedings between them didn't exist. "We need to talk." Raphael felt his stomach drop. "How did you get past security?" "I said it was an emergency consultation," she replied, shrugging. "I'm not here to cause trouble, just to propose a solution." Inside the apartment, Luke sensed the tension. He ran to the kitchen, clutching Danielle's legs. "Who is it?" "No one important," Danielle quickly replied, crouching down to meet the boy's eye level. "How about finishing that little boat drawing while we wait for your dad?" At the door, Raphael stood firm. "We have nothing to talk about, Dr. Camilla. My lawyer handles everything related to the case." "A case that could disappear," she insinuated, lowering her voice. "Just like the evidence against me on the professional board." "Are you threatening me?" "Offering a dignified exit for all of us," she corrected. "Drop the accusations, I'll drop mine about your business practices, and everyone goes their own way." Raphael laughed without humor. "You really don't understand, do you? This isn't about me or my company. It's about the damage you caused to Luke, to Danielle." "Oh yes, your new family," Camilla replied, pronouncing the last word with disdain. "I heard the former nanny now has almost maternal status. How touching." The provocation was calculated to hurt, but Raphael didn't bite. Years of managing difficult businesses had taught him to recognize manipulation tactics. "This conversation is over," he said, beginning to close the door. "Any future communication must be through our lawyers." Camilla blocked the door with her foot. "Do you really think it's over? That she's here out of the goodness of her heart? Have you asked yourself why a young, beautiful woman would abandon everything to care for a rich man's problematic son?" "Get out," Raphael ordered, his voice dangerously controlled. "Now." When the door finally closed, he needed a few minutes to compose himself before returning to the living room. He found Danielle and Luke sitting on the rug, drawing together as if nothing had happened. "Is everything all right?" Danielle asked, looking at him with concern. "Yes," he lied. "Just a mix-up with the mail." The picnic proceeded as planned. The day was perfect. Blue sky, pleasant temperature, the park vibrant with families enjoying the weekend. Luke ran and played like any child his age, and for a few hours the shadows of the unwanted visit seemed to dissipate. It was only at night, after Luke fell asleep, that Raphael told Danielle about the encounter with Camilla. "She won't give up easily," he concluded, pouring himself a glass of wine on the balcony. "And I'm afraid she'll try something more drastic." "Like what?" Danielle asked, worried. "I don't know." But she seemed unbalanced, obsessed. Danielle sighed, looking at the city lights. "I always knew there would be resistance. People like her don't accept losing." "The case with the professional board is moving forward," Raphael informed her. "The evidence is strong, not just against you, but other former patients have also reported inappropriate behavior." "That's good," Danielle replied, distracted. Raphael noticed her distant expression. "Something else is worrying you." It wasn't a question, but an observation. In their months together, they had learned to read each other's emotions with almost unsettling accuracy. "I received news from the Lake District," Danielle admitted. "My grandmother is getting worse. The nurses say she asks for me every day." Raphael nodded, understanding. "Do you want to visit her?" "I want to bring her to London," Danielle replied, revealing the thought that had been consuming her for days. "For better treatment, but mainly for us to be together." "That's an excellent idea," Raphael agreed immediately. "We can adapt the extra room for her, hire full-time nurses." "Raphael," Danielle interrupted softly, "I don't want to take advantage of your generosity. I've been saving to rent a small apartment for the two of us." He seemed genuinely hurt. "After everything we've been through, do you still see me as an employer from whom you need to keep your distance?" The question hung between them, laden with unspoken implications. Danielle looked away, unsure. In recent months, the line between professional and personal had become increasingly blurred. Dinners after Luke fell asleep, long conversations on the balcony, occasional accidental touches that seemed to last a second longer than necessary. But neither of them had dared to name what was growing between them. "It's not that," she finally replied. "It's just that I'm scared." "Of what?" "Of losing my independence. Of waking up one day and realizing that I'm no longer Danielle Galvin, pedagogue and independent woman, but just Luke's guardian, Rafael Mendoza's protégé." Raphael nodded, understanding. "What if there's a third option? Neither employee nor dependent, a partner in every sense?" Danielle's heart quickened. "What exactly are you suggesting?" Instead of answering with words, Raphael slowly approached, giving her time to back away if she wished. When their lips met, it was as if an electric current surged through both their bodies, a long-contained tension finally finding release. The kiss was interrupted by a small noise at the balcony door. Luke was there, barefoot and in pajamas, watching them with wide eyes. "Luke!" Raphael exclaimed, alarmed. "You should be sleeping." The boy didn't answer immediately. His gaze moved from his father to Danielle, processing what he had seen. Finally, a slow smile formed on his face. "Are you two sweethearts now?" he asked with the direct innocence of a child. Danielle and Raphael exchanged glances, uncertain how to proceed. "We're talking about it," Raphael replied cautiously. Luke nodded as if it made perfect sense, "just like in my drawing. The tree, the family." With those enigmatic words, he yawned and announced he was going back to bed alone, leaving the adults perplexed and emotional in equal measure. "I think we have his approval," Raphael commented after the boy left. Danielle smiled, but worry still shadowed her eyes. "We can't rush things. For him especially." "Agreed. We'll take it slow." The following week, as they planned Grandma Benedicta's transfer to London, the case against Dr. Camilla reached a critical point. New evidence emerged. Recordings of phone calls she made to Danielle's potential employers, threatening text messages, and even records of unauthorized access to Luke's medical file after she was removed from the case. The judgment by the professional board was swift and decisive. Permanent revocation of her license, preventing her from practicing the profession again. The news arrived by phone as Danielle prepared the room for her grandmother's arrival. "It's over," Raphael announced, hanging up his phone with a relieved expression. The board was unanimous. Danielle felt a weight lifted from her shoulders. "I hope she seeks help now." "You're more generous than I would be," Raphael commented, hugging her from behind as she arranged pillows on the newly installed hospital bed. Grandma Benedicta's arrival once again transformed the apartment's dynamic. The elderly woman, with white hair and astute eyes that resembled her granddaughter's, observed everything with thinly disguised curiosity. Despite her physical fragility, her mind remained as sharp as ever. "So this is the famous Raphael," she commented after introductions, scrutinizing him from head to toe. "And little Luke. You're exactly as Danielle described in her letters." Luke, normally shy with strangers, surprised everyone by sitting next to the elderly woman and beginning to show her his drawings without hesitation. Perhaps it was the resemblance to Danielle, or simply the aura of tranquil wisdom that Grandma Benedicta emanated. But the boy seemed completely at ease. "You draw very well," she praised, examining each page with genuine attention. "When I was young, I also liked to draw." "Was Grandma an artist?" Luke asked, using the familiar term without realizing it. Grandma Benedicta smiled at Danielle, a silent communication passing between them. "Yes, little one. I used to paint landscapes of the hills." That night, after settling both her grandmother and Luke, Danielle found Raphael on the balcony, contemplating the illuminated city. "Your grandmother is amazing," he commented. "Now I understand where your strength comes from." "She's always been my safe haven," Danielle agreed. "After my parents passed, she's the one who raised me." Luke called her grandma, Raphael observed, naturally without thinking twice. "I noticed. I think in his mind we're all connected now." Raphael turned to her, taking her hands in his. "And aren't we?" Before Danielle could answer, Raphael's phone rang, his lawyer calling at an unusual hour. Raphael's expression transformed as he listened, moving from confusion to alarm. "What is it?" Danielle asked when he hung up. "Camilla," he replied, tense. Apparently, she gave an interview to a gossip blog, insinuating an inappropriate relationship between us during Luke's treatment. "She's trying to tarnish my reputation and, by extension, the company's case." "She has no proof," Danielle retorted. "It's her word against ours. The problem isn't legal, it's public image. I have an important meeting tomorrow with investors for the new development in Notting Hill. If they see this story—" Danielle squeezed his hand. "We'll face this together." Like everything so far. The next morning, as Raphael prepared for the decisive meeting, he received a call from the main investor, requesting a private meeting before the formal presentation. The tone was serious, making it clear that the news had reached his ears. "Go," Danielle encouraged. "Show them who you really are." The chosen café for the meeting was discreet, in a boutique hotel in the gardens. Richard Vance, a veteran entrepreneur in the real estate market, waited alone at a secluded table. His impassive face revealed nothing. "Raphael," he greeted formally, "thank you for coming early." "I imagine the reason," Raphael replied directly. "The news online," Richard nodded. "Normally I don't pay attention to gossip, but when it involves a business partner of the magnitude of this project, these are false accusations from a former collaborator whose license was revoked for unethical behavior," Raphael explained. "I have all the proof and can—" "I'm not questioning the veracity," Richard interrupted. "I'm concerned about the image. Our clients are conservative, they value family stability." Raphael felt a chill. He knew where that conversation was going. "The Notting Hill project is important to us," Richard continued. "We are willing to maintain the investment, but we need guarantees." "What kind of guarantees?" "Discretion. An appropriate public image." Richard hesitated, choosing his words. "Perhaps it's best to temporarily remove this caregiver, at least until the launch of the development." Raphael felt something break inside him. Years ago he might have considered the proposal, sacrificing personal relationships for professional success. Not anymore. "Mr. Vance," he replied calmly, "I appreciate your sincerity, but I have to refuse." "Refuse what?" "The investment, if it comes with those conditions. Danielle is not just Luke's caregiver. She is part of our family. And I will not remove her for any amount of money." Richard seemed genuinely surprised. Are you refusing a £400 million project because of a woman? I'm choosing my values, Raphael corrected, standing up. If you change your mind about the conditions, my office is open. Have a good day. As he left the cafe, Raphael felt an unexpected lightness. For the first time in years, he was absolutely certain of a decision, and he couldn't wait to go home and share that moment of clarity with Danielle. A gentle breeze swayed the branches of the large oak tree in the center of the garden. It was a majestic tree, with a thick trunk and a leafy canopy, a silent witness to the transformation that had occurred in that family over 2 years. Under its welcoming shade, white chairs formed a semicircle, decorated with colorful ribbons and wildflowers. The Blue Ridge estate in Surrey had been carefully chosen for the event. Away from the urban hustle, but close enough for everyone to arrive without difficulty, the location combined rural charm with the necessary comfort to accommodate Grandma Benedicta, who, despite the ailments of age, insisted on participating in that special moment. Danielle watched the final preparations through the window of the small main house. Her white dress, simple yet elegant, reflected her personality, without excess, with beauty in the small things. The bouquet of lavender and daisies had been arranged by Luke, now 10 years old, who had insisted on participating in every detail of the ceremony. "Are you nervous, my dear?" Grandma Benedicta asked, settled in a special armchair brought for the occasion. "A little," Danielle admitted, adjusting a lock of her brown hair that she had let grow out in recent months. "But it's a good kind of nervousness." The elderly woman smiled, her eyes shining with wisdom and contained emotion. "I knew this day would come ever since I first saw you 3 together. Some families are born ready, just waiting for the moment to find each other." Outside, Raphael checked the last details with the celebrant, dressed in a navy blue suit that contrasted with a white shirt without a tie, a concession to the more relaxed style he had adopted since deciding to prioritize quality of life over corporate image. "Everything ready, Dad?" Luke asked, appearing by his side. The boy wore an outfit similar to his father's, his brown hair carefully combed for the occasion. "Almost everything," Raphael replied, crouching down to meet his son's eye level. "But I need to check one very important thing. Are you really happy?" Luke rolled his eyes, with the typical impatience of someone who considers the question unnecessary. "Of course I am. I've been drawing this day for years." Raphael smiled, remembering the first drawings the boy had made, the 3 figures under the tree, the family he had envisioned long before any adult. Children's intuition sometimes saw beyond what experienced eyes could perceive. Guests began to arrive. The ceremony would be small, only close friends and family. Marcus Lane, the lawyer who had become a friend, accompanied by his wife. Danielle's postgraduate colleagues, now graduated with distinction. Luke's school teachers, who had witnessed his extraordinary evolution in recent years. And, to the surprise of many, Tiago, Danielle's ex-boyfriend from the Lake District, accompanied by his pregnant wife. Time had transformed what could have been resentment into a genuine and respectful friendship. Notably absent was Richard Vance, the investor who 2 years earlier had tried to pressure Raphael to remove Danielle in the name of business. Raphael's refusal that day had marked a turning point in his career. He had abandoned mega projects to focus on smaller, sustainable developments, many aimed at social housing. The decision, initially seen as a professional setback, had proven to be not only morally satisfying, but also financially viable. His new company, smaller but more agile, had become a benchmark for humanized projects in London. When the soft music began to play, an acoustic version of Eric Clapton's Wonderful Tonight, chosen by Luke, all eyes turned to the main house. Raphael positioned himself under the oak tree, with Luke beside him, both visibly emotional. Danielle emerged, pushing Grandma Benedicta's wheelchair. The 2 most important women in her life shared this moment, the one who had given her roots and the one who had allowed her to take flight. Upon reaching the center of the garden, she kissed her grandmother's forehead and continued alone to where Raphael and Luke awaited her. The celebrant, a family friend specializing in humanist ceremonies, began the celebration with words about encounters, missed connections, and the paths that lead us to the people who transform our lives. "We are here to celebrate not only the union of Danielle and Raphael, But the formal recognition of a family that already exists in the heart, he declared, smiling at Luke. A family built not by blood but by the daily choice to stay, care, and love. Raphael took Danielle's hands in his. When Luke stopped speaking, my world fell apart. I sought solutions everywhere, consulted renowned specialists, invested fortunes. But it was you, sitting on my living room floor with a simple drawing, who found the way to his heart. And, without me realizing it, to mine as well. Silent tears streamed down Danielle's face as he continued. I promised to continue learning to listen to the silence, to see beyond words, to value what truly matters. I promised to create with you and Luke a home where everyone can truly be themselves, without fear or judgment. When it was Danielle's turn to speak, her voice choked with emotion, could barely pronounce the rehearsed words. I entered your house as a professional, seeking only to do my job, so I never imagined I would find a family. In you, Raphael, I discovered a partner who respects my independence while offering me unconditional support. In Luke, I found a teacher of resilience and sensitivity. She turned to the boy, who watched her with bright eyes of anticipation. To you, Luke, I promise to keep drawing paths when words fail. I promise to always be by your side no matter how difficult the journey. The moment of vows was interrupted by an unexpected request from Luke. Can I speak too? He asked, his voice clear and confident, a striking contrast to the silent boy of 3 years ago. The celebrant, surprised but moved, nodded immediately. Luke took a deep breath, as he always did when he needed to concentrate to speak in public, an exercise learned in his speech therapy sessions. When I stopped talking, he began, pronouncing each word with deliberate care, it was because no one really listened to me. At school they ignored it when I got hurt. At home everyone was too busy. A respectful silence fell over the garden. Even the birds seemed to have stopped to listen. Then Nanny came and didn't try to make me talk. She just sat next to me and drew with me. She was the first person who understood that I still had a lot to say. I just didn't know how. Raphael and Danielle held each other's hands tightly, deeply touched by the unexpected testimony. I drew our family before it really existed, Luke continued, pulling a folded paper from his pocket. This was the first one. It was the drawing of the 3 figures under the tree, now faded and marked by time, but preserved like a treasure. And this is today's. He revealed another drawing, recently made, the same tree, the same 3 figures, but now accompanied by an elderly woman with white hair in a wheelchair and, to everyone's surprise, a baby in Danielle's arms. There was a collective gasp. Danielle looked at the drawing, then at Raphael, who seemed as surprised as she was. Luke, she whispered, what is this? The boy smiled, with the serene confidence of someone who knows truths hidden from adults. It's our complete family. Grandma Benedicta, you, Dad, me, and my little sister who's still coming. Danielle covered her mouth with her hand, unable to hold back tears. Only the previous night had she confirmed the pregnancy with a home test, planning to tell Raphael after the ceremony. How could Luke know? I dreamed about her, the boy explained, as if reading her thoughts. She had your smile and Dad's eyes. There were no dry eyes in the garden when the exchange of rings finally took place. Raphael, still processing the unexpected news, could barely put the ring on Danielle's finger, his hands trembling with emotion. We're pregnant? He whispered, incredulous. She nodded, smiling through her tears. I found out yesterday. I was going to tell you tonight. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife, the celebrant announced, moved. And what love has joined together, nothing can separate. The kiss that sealed the union was interrupted by Luke, who threw himself against their legs, hugging them with all the strength of his small arms. Raphael lifted him, including him in the embrace that now officially enveloped the newly formed family, and the life that was growing, still invisible in Danielle's womb. The celebration that followed was simple and joyful, filled with English music, homemade food, and many shared stories. As dusk fell and the sun painted the horizon in shades of orange, Danielle found a moment to be alone with Grandma Benedicta, who observed everything with the satisfaction of someone who sees a long and winding road culminate exactly where it should. Thank you for never giving up on me, Grandma, Danielle said, adjusting the blanket over the elderly woman's knees, for teaching me that family goes far beyond blood. Grandma Benedicta squeezed her granddaughter's hand with surprising strength. Remember what I always said? God writes straight with crooked lines. Your path had many twists and turns, but it brought you exactly where you needed to be. On the other side of the garden, Luke showed his most recent drawings to the guests, enthusiastically explaining the meanings behind each stroke. His current teacher, a specialist in inclusive education, commented to Raphael how much the boy had progressed. He has exceptional artistic talent, she observed. Have you thought about specific lessons to develop this skill? We're exploring all possibilities, Raphael replied, watching his son with pride. The most important thing is that he found his voice, both literally and metaphorically. When night fell completely and the stars dotted the mountain sky, most of the guests had already left. Only the family remained, gathered around a small bonfire lit to ward off the chill descending from the hills. What did you think of my drawing? Luke asked, snuggling between his newlywed parents. Of our complete family, Raphael and Danielle exchanged knowing glances. It was the most beautiful drawing I've ever seen, Raphael replied, affectionately ruffling his son's hair. And the most accurate. How did you know, Luke? Danielle asked softly. About the baby? The boy shrugged, with that childlike simplicity that often confused adults. The same way I knew we would be a real family one day. I saw it. And what else do you see in our future? Raphael teased, curious. Luke closed his eyes for a moment, as if consulting some secret source of knowledge. When he opened them again, they were full of certainty. I see us living in a big house with a garden full of trees. I see Grandma Benedicta telling stories to my sister. I see you, Dad, building houses for people who need them, and Danny teaching other children to draw their feelings. He paused, thoughtful. And I see us being happy. Not always. Sometimes we'll fight and be sad, but most of the time. Danielle wrapped her arm around her stepson's shoulders, now also officially her son, in a protective embrace. You know what I find most incredible about you, Luke? Your ability to dream a future and then help build it. That's what you taught me, he simply replied. To draw what I want to see happen. Later, when Luke finally fell asleep, exhausted by the day's emotions, Raphael and Danielle lingered in the boy's room for a while, watching his peaceful sleep. He knew before all of us, Raphael commented in a low voice, referring to both the pregnancy and the family's union. Children see what we adults complicate too much to perceive, Danielle replied, instinctively stroking her still flat belly. Are you happy with the news? Raphael hugged her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. More than I could express in words, and you, scared, emotional, grateful. She turned to face him. If someone had told me, on that first day in your mansion, when I crossed the door and heard Luke's screams, that 3 years later we would be here. Life has a strange way of putting the pieces together, doesn't it? He completed. Sometimes you have to go through storms to find the rainbow. Like in the drawings we used to make, she remembered, smiling at the memory of their first attempts at communication with Luke. The dark cloud that got an umbrella and, later, colors. They quietly left the room, leaving the door ajar as Luke preferred. In the corridor, Raphael held Danielle's face in his hands, looking at her intently. Thank you, he said, his voice choked. For what? For sitting on the floor that day. For offering a pencil instead of a speech. For giving my son his voice back. For showing that family isn't a rigid structure, but a set of hearts that choose to walk together. Danielle smiled through the tears that began to form. I did nothing but listen to what he was already trying to say. Sometimes all we need is someone willing to listen to us, even when we can't speak. The next morning, as the new family had breakfast on the estate's balcony, Luke appeared with a new drawing. In it, the large oak tree under which they had married extended its roots deep into the earth while its branches reached for the sky. It's for the baby's room, he announced proudly. So she knows from the beginning that she has strong roots and can grow as high as she wants. Danielle framed that drawing, and months later, it was the first item hung in the room prepared for Beatrice, a name chosen by Luke, meaning she who brings happiness. With the birth of the girl, Luke's drawings gained a new character, small with dark hair and a wide smile. The family under the tree now had 5 figures, exactly as he had predicted. Years passed. Grandma Benedicta passed away peacefully one autumn afternoon, surrounded by the love of the family she had helped to form. Luke, now a talented teenager, began to gain recognition for his illustrations in national competitions. Danielle completed her doctorate in inclusive education and founded the Oak Tree Institute, a center specialized in expressive therapy for children with emotional trauma. Raphael dedicated himself to social housing projects, transforming his business experience into solutions for vulnerable families. And Beatrice, the girl of Luke's premonitory dreams, grew up surrounded by drawings and stories, learning early on that the most important truths are not always spoken in words. On a special afternoon, when she turned 5, Beatrice made her first elaborate drawing, a leafy tree with 5 figures holding hands in its shade. Danielle, seeing the drawing, felt a familiar shiver run down her spine. "Where have you seen this drawing before, Bea?" she asked, curious. The girl shook her head, making her dark curls bounce. "Nowhere, Mummy. I just drew our special family." Luke, now 15, approached to see his sister's work. His eyes met Danielle's, sharing a silent understanding that transcended words. The story had come full circle, and a new one was beginning, drawn first in the heart, then on paper, and finally manifested in reality, exactly as Luke had always known it would be. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope that the journey of Danielle, Raphael, and Luke has touched your hearts. A story that reminds us that the deepest communication does not always happen through words, and that families are built with love, respect, and daily choices. To discover more human stories that explore the human condition in all its complexity, be sure to subscribe to our channel. Click the subscribe button on the left and activate the notification bell to be notified when new narratives arrive. If this story resonated with you, leave your like and share your thoughts in the comments. What touched your heart the most? Which character did you identify with the most? Your opinions are valuable and help shape our future creations. Every week we bring new emotional stories that explore the rich tapestry of human experience. Don't miss our upcoming content. We're waiting for you on the next narrative journey.